I never thought I'd feel this way again, especially not with someone so much younger. But that night, as the water rippled around us, I crossed a line I swore I never would. And when his lips met mine, I knew nothing would ever be the same. My name is Jessica, and for years I thought my life was settled. I was a widow, a mother of 2 grown children, and someone who had grown accustomed to the quiet loneliness that followed my husband's passing. Daniel, my husband, had been my everything, my partner, my confidant, and my best friend. When he died unexpectedly 4 years ago, a part of me died with him. Our home, once vibrant with the sounds of family life, now felt hollow, like a shell of what it used to be. My children Mia and Liam were both busy with their own lives. Mia was a lawyer in New York, and Liam was a software engineer in San Francisco. They called often, but their visits were rare. I was proud of them, of course. They had built successful careers and were thriving. But their absence left a gaping hole in my life. The days were manageable, but the nights were the hardest. That's when the loneliness would creep in, wrapping itself around me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. To cope, I found small comforts, reading, gardening, and most of all, swimming. The pool in our backyard had been a gift from Daniel on our 15th anniversary. It was where we spent countless summer days with the kids, laughing and splashing in the water. Now it was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the weight of my thoughts. Floating in the cool water, I could almost pretend that Daniel was still there, sitting by the edge with his warm smile, watching over me. But everything changed the night Ryan showed up. He was the young man who came by a few times a week to clean the house and maintain the pool. At 27, he was much younger than me, but there was something about him that I couldn't ignore. He had an easy charm, a quiet confidence that made him seem older than his years. His rugged, sun-kissed face and warm smile were hard to miss, and I found myself looking forward to his visits more than I cared to admit. That Sunday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I was floating in the pool, lost in my thoughts, when Ryan appeared. He had come back to fix a filter valve, but what started as a simple conversation quickly turned into something I never expected. And in that moment, my carefully constructed world began to unravel. After that evening, things between Jessica and Ryan began to shift. It started with small, almost imperceptible changes. He lingered a little longer after finishing his work, making casual conversation that felt just a little too personal. I told myself it was nothing, just friendliness, but deep down I knew there was more to it. One day, as I was reading by the pool, Ryan showed up unexpectedly. "I thought I'd check on the filter again," he said, his voice casual, but his eyes held a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I nodded, trying to act normal, but my heart raced as he knelt by the pool's edge, his hands deftly working on the equipment. I couldn't help but notice the way his muscles flexed under his shirt, or the way his gaze occasionally flicked toward me. "Everything okay?" he asked, catching me staring. I quickly looked away, my cheeks burning. "Yes, just lost in thought," I stammered. He smiled, that easy, disarming smile, and for a moment the air between us felt charged. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew. Ryan started finding excuses to come by more often. A loose tile, a clogged drain, anything to justify his presence. Each visit left me more unsettled, more aware of the growing attraction I couldn't ignore. I tried to convince myself it was harmless, just a fleeting crush, but the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room, made it impossible to dismiss. One evening, as the sun set, Ryan stayed longer than usual. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing effortlessly. But when he reached out to brush a strand of hair from my face, I froze. His touch was gentle, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "I should go," he said, his voice low, but he didn't move. Neither did I. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between Jessica and Ryan grew unbearable. It was no longer just about lingering glances or casual touches. It was about the unspoken words that hung heavy in the air every time they were together. Jessica tried to convince herself that it was nothing, that she was imagining things, but the way Ryan looked at her made it impossible to deny the truth. One afternoon, Ryan arrived earlier than usual. "I thought I'd get a head start on cleaning the pool," he said, his voice calm but his eyes searching hers. She nodded, trying to act normal, but her heart raced as she watched him work. His movements were deliberate, his presence impossible to ignore. She found herself drawn to him, her thoughts consumed by the forbidden attraction she couldn't shake. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ryan finished his work but didn't leave. Instead, he sat by the pool, his feet dangling in the water. "It's peaceful here," he said, his voice soft. Jessica joined him, the cool water lapping at her ankles. They sat in silence for a while, the tension between them growing with each passing moment. "Do you ever feel like life is passing you by?" Ryan asked suddenly, his gaze fixed on the water. Jessica hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Especially since Daniel passed. It's like I'm stuck in this limbo." Ryan turned to look at her, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You deserve to be happy," he said, his voice firm. "You deserve to feel alive again." His words struck a chord deep within her, stirring emotions she had buried long ago. Before she could respond, Ryan reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The touch was electric, sending a jolt of warmth through her body. She should have pulled away, should have stopped him, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned into the moment, her heart pounding in her chest. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling. We can't." But he didn't let her finish. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing against her skin. "I know," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "But I can't help how I feel." In that moment, the walls Jessica had built around herself crumbled. She leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. It was wrong, she knew that, but for the first time in years she felt alive. The kiss between Jessica and Ryan was a moment of pure, unbridled passion. A collision of emotions that neither of them could control. For a brief, fleeting moment, the world around them disappeared, and it was just the two of them, lost in each other. But as quickly as it began, reality came crashing back in. Jessica pulled away, her breath ragged, her heart pounding in her chest. "We can't do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is wrong. You're so young, and I'm a widow. A mother. This isn't who I am." Ryan looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and frustration. "Why does it have to be wrong?" he asked, his voice low and intense. "Why can't we just feel what we feel without worrying about what anyone else thinks?" Before Jessica could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. Her heart stopped as she turned to see Mia, her daughter, stepping out of the car. Panic surged through her as she realized how this must look. Her sitting by the pool with Ryan, their faces flushed, their emotions raw. "Mom!" Mia called out, her voice tinged with confusion. "What's going on?" Jessica stood up quickly, her mind racing as she tried to come up with an explanation. "Mia! I didn't know you were coming today." Mia's eyes narrowed as she glanced between her mother and Ryan, who was still sitting by the pool, his expression unreadable. "Who's this?" she asked, her tone sharp. "This is Ryan," Jessica said, her voice shaky. He helps around the house. He was just fixing the pool." Mia crossed her arms, her gaze piercing. "Fixing the pool, huh? Is that what you call it?" Jessica felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She wanted to explain, to make her daughter understand, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she stood there, frozen, as Mia's eyes filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're kidding me, right?" Mia said, her voice rising. "Mom, he's younger than me. What are you thinking?" "Mia, it's not what it looks like," Jessica said, though even she didn't believe her own words. "Really? Because it looks like you're having some kind of midlife crisis with the pool boy." Mia snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. Ryan stood up, his face calm but his eyes filled with regret. "I should go," he said quietly, grabbing his toolbox and heading toward the gate without another word. Jessica watched him leave, her heart breaking as the weight of the situation settled over her. She turned back to Mia, who was still glaring at her, waiting for an explanation. "Mia, I'm sorry," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what came over me. I've been so lonely, and he made me feel something I haven't felt in years." Mia's expression softened slightly, but the anger was still there. "Mom, I get that you're lonely, but this isn't the answer. You're better than this." Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes as the reality of what had happened hit her. She had crossed a line, one she never thought she would cross, and now she was facing the consequences. The guilt, the shame, the fear of what this meant for her relationship with her daughter. It all came crashing down on her at once. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to do." Mia sighed, her anger giving way to a look of concern. "We'll figure it out, Mom. But you need to end this. Now." The days that followed were a blur of tension and regret. Jessica couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at her, no matter how hard she tried. Mia stayed for a few days, her presence a constant reminder of the mistake Jessica had made. The conversations between them were strained, filled with unspoken words and lingering disappointment. You need to cut ties with him, Mom, Mia said one evening as they sat in the living room. This isn't healthy. It's not just about the age difference. It's about what this could do to you, to our family. Jessica nodded, her eyes downcast. I know, she whispered. I don't know how to fix this. Start by ending it, Mia said firmly. No more excuses. No more seeing him. You need to focus on yourself, on healing, not on whatever this is. Jessica knew her daughter was right, but the thought of cutting Ryan out of her life filled her with a deep, aching sadness. She had grown attached to him, to the way he made her feel alive again. But she also knew that continuing down this path would only lead to more pain, for her, for Ryan, and for her family. The next time Ryan came by, Jessica was ready. She met him at the door, her heart heavy but her resolve firm. We need to talk, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Ryan nodded, his expression somber. He seemed to know what was coming. I figured, he said quietly. They sat by the pool, the place where it had all begun, and Jessica took a deep breath. Whatever this is between us, it can't happen again, she said, her voice trembling. It's not fair to either of us. I have a family, a life that I can't risk ruining. And you deserve someone who can give you everything you need, without all this baggage. Ryan was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the water. Finally, he nodded. I understand, he said, his voice soft. I never meant to complicate your life. I care about you, Jessica. More than I should. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes as she reached out and took his hand. I care about you too, she said. But this isn't right. We both know that. Ryan squeezed her hand gently before letting go. I'll miss you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll miss you too, Jessica replied, her heart breaking as she watched him walk away, knowing it was for the best. After Ryan left, Jessica felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The weight of the guilt and shame began to lift, but the emptiness she had tried to fill with his presence returned. She knew she had made the right decision, but that didn't make it any easier. Over the next few weeks, Jessica focused on rebuilding her life. She reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and even started seeing a therapist to work through her grief and loneliness. It wasn't easy, but she knew she had to face her emotions head-on rather than seeking comfort in something, or someone, that could never truly heal her. One evening, as she sat by the pool, Jessica reflected on everything that had happened. She realized that her attraction to Ryan had been a desperate attempt to fill the void left by Daniel's death. But no one could ever replace him, and trying to do so had only led to more pain. I've learned that loneliness can make you do things you never thought you were capable of, she wrote in her journal one night. But it's not an excuse. I have to take responsibility for my actions and learn from them. I can't keep running from my grief. I have to face it, no matter how hard it is. Jessica also realized the importance of boundaries and self-respect. She had allowed herself to be swept up in a moment of weakness, but she knew now that she deserved more than a fleeting, forbidden connection. She deserved to heal, to grow, and to find happiness on her own terms. As the days turned into months, Jessica began to feel like herself again. The pain of losing Daniel was still there, but it no longer consumed her. She had found a way to move forward, not by forgetting the past, but by embracing it and learning from it. If you were in Jessica's position, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Stay tuned for more emotional and thought-provoking stories that explore the complexities of love, loss, and life's unexpected twists.